This is Talking My Walking. I am Rodrigo Ribeiro, just another voice in the wilderness. Today I'm going to talk about technoscientism, technofixism, spirituality, divinity, and humanity in the web of life. By now, most people understand the concepts of technoscientism and technofixism, which basically revolves around faith and hope in science and technology, in the scientific faith, in the scientific knowledge, and hope in technology, which means that we hope and believe that science and technology will save us from eventual extinction. While we believe this, we do not criticize or we do not engage in understanding, in the acquire comprehensive understanding of the very system that is driving us towards extinction. I mean, or at least towards the end of civilization, the collapse of civilization. Not just one civilization, but the collapse of the systems that support civilization, and therefore civilization depends on the earth systems to provide what is needed to sustain civilization. Because civilization is a human creation, is not part of nature, is part of nature, it survives in the web of nature, it feeds on the web of nature, but is a human construction, not a natural reality. There are other three concepts that I want to introduce. I mean, to talk a little bit about them in this context that I'm talking about today, which is the concept of Anthropocene, Capitalocene, and Technocene. For many people, we live in the Anthropocene age, which means we live in the age of man, where the geological, this is a kind of a geological age that is driven by human action. That is because we have this industrial civilization, and we have grown exponentially in numbers, which means that we are supposedly too many people. There are too many people alive in this planet, and therefore everything that is wrong, which means climate change, ecological and environmental destruction, and the extinction of the mass extinction of many species is caused by the anthropos. Is caused by us. So this is this is a very it's a very reductive way of explaining and framing the problem of civilization, and why do humans happen to be, or why humanity happen to be in such dire straits. It is just, can we just blame the human condition, or is something else that we should take into account, such as the concept of the Capitalocene, okay? Which means that probably the problems that we have, even the problems of too much, of eventual overpopulation, is caused by the accumulation of capital. It's caused by a system that is called capitalism, which is based on the manufactured scarcity, and the enclosure of the commons, which means that makes people, while some are driven by the accumulation, by the maximization of profit and accumulation of wealth, and the control of private property and proprietary rights, others are forced to labor, sometimes unnecessary and destructive labor, just to be able to survive. Which means that we live for a long time, which is exacerbated now in the age of the accumulation, where people at the top of the socioeconomic pyramid is driven by the accumulation of capital, the endless accumulation of capital. Therefore, they do not care. The economic systems and the market systems have to expand, because capitalism is inherently imperialistic and colonialist. It needs to control resources, territories, populations. When I mean control them, to expel them if they are resisting the occupation, and kill them in order to expand the control of territories and the resources and everything else, and to have political control, not only territorial control, geographical control. It is about political, economic, financial, and cultural and ideological control. And there comes the Technoscene. What is the Technoscene? Is the age of the supremacy of technology over humanity. That's why people are talking about transhumanism and like Peter Thiel saying openly that we need to replace politics with technology. That's what Palantir is about. It's not about it's not about giving up control and power or wealth. It's about concentration, the continuation of the accumulation of capital, concentration of power, but with using technology. That's why we live in the Technoscene, because this Technoscene is exactly the point of the religions of Technoscientism and technofixism. This is the religions, the ideological support that gives the ideological support of the Technoscene. Okay, so we cannot understand, for those people that keep talking about overpopulation and Anthropocene, and I know a lot of them, and they are, you can find many lectures and talks and this and that and scientific papers talking about it. But these people, intentionally or not, lack the understanding, the comprehensive understanding of this. This is a chair, or this is a system that has three pillars. Okay, that humanity for sure, but it has the pillar of capital and the pillar of technology. And it's not humanity by itself, which means it's not the Anthropocene. It is the Capitalocene, supported by the Technoscene, that is driving the Anthropocene. And not because of too many people, but because of a complete, asymmetrical, and crazy consumption, mainly by the rich. It's not because the poor people don't make waste, or poor people don't also participate in the consumerist society, in the consumer society, in this mindless consumer society. But it's not the point. This society has not been created by the poor. The poor are the tools. The poor have not a real saying. Even in the countries where people vote, what kind of real saying have you? Especially in the Western Hemisphere, since the 80s, for example, or even earlier. Does it really matter what you vote? I mean, there was a time even when you could vote. The progressive vote in social democratic parties or socialist parties would even matter. Could have some benefits for the working class and for the poor, but not anymore. So we cannot understand where we are, who we are. It's not science. Science is providing us knowledge, not understanding. Understanding. Science makes laws and produces knowledge. The understanding of humanity in the context of the web of life, it requires more than science. It requires more than scientific knowledge. It doesn't. I always say it because I am all for facts and science-based knowledge, but I don't worship science. Okay? As I don't worship technology, because I understand the limits of science, as I understand the limits of technology, as I understand the limits of knowledge, and as I understand the limits of any form of intelligence. Because individually or even as groups, we are never able to have the full picture of anything. We can discover laws about nature and this and that. That's one thing. But life is more than laws. It's a web of interconnections, of interdependencies. Is relational, as it is all values that matter, such as truth, justice, trust, freedom. All these things are relational. They are not things, by the way. All these realities are relational. They only have value because they go through living systems. That's why we cannot understand life but only in a holistic way. Because when we talk about economic systems, we cannot separate an economic system. We cannot understand an economic system without having a social system and a political system and a cultural system and the ideas and concepts and narratives, and why that plays together. We can have an analysis separated in fields, but to understand the economy, we need to understand that the economy happens in a society, and that society is a socio-cultural system as well as it is a socio-economic and political system. And this is the environment, this multi-layered environment where we make sense of anything while being bombarded with lies. Unfortunately, we live in a web of deceit. Why do we live in a web of deceit? We live in a web of deceit because deceit and lies are necessary to keep an unjust system. It requires lies, social division, tribalization. Okay? That's how it works. And those on the top, which are those that do not represent humanity, they are the ones that represent the exception, which means they are the ones that lack the social skills, the psychosocial skills that makes us humans, which is empathy and compassion and other features. But these main two, that were the ones that make us so, that is they are inseparated from us as social beings. But since we have this cultural anomaly, okay, it's not an anomaly, I guess, but the power, the creative power of human imagination allows us to create, to build tools, to discover laws, to build narratives, and all the rest that everybody knows. And this is why they have the advantage of taking over of trust, of the other's trust, in order to make them, to use them as useful idiots and cannon fodder. This is what civilization has been about, this imperialistic civilizational paradigm. Okay? Since I can remember. But it's also beyond it, because in any group of men and women, in any human group, indigenous group, a tribe, a small community, or even a single family, when a person in that group or a group of people that are narcissistic, sociopathic, or psychopathic, or both, and megalomaniacal, they will do They will use any opportunity in order to control that group and then control the wider group, to convince them, to follow them. And they will build the legal system and the moral code, the legal system to support them, and the moral code to glorify them, to make the rest of the group, transform the rest of the group and the followers, obedient idiots and cannon fodder for megalomaniacal enterprises like wars of to conquer other peoples, all the things that everybody knows about. And this is why they have a hedge. And this is why, that's one of the points that we need to understand. This is not rocket science. That's the point. There is so many things written, and it seems to me that the most important points are either missing or maybe, I don't know, in many cases intentionally obfuscated or just left aside. Let me go back to what I was talking about, what I wanted to talk about. I said technoscientism, technofixism, and there was, spirituality. And there was, I wanted to talk about the difference between spirituality, divinity, and humanity in the web of life. When we think about humanity, we have to think, we need to understand humanity as part, as integrated in the web of life. That's why the word spirituality has a lot to do with understanding, in my opinion at least, the human condition through the web of life, through us as earthly beings. And divinity has been, in my opinion, in many senses, I don't want to say that everything about religion is wrong and blah, blah. I don't want to engage in that. I just want to say that divinity, it has the same problem of technoscientism and technofixism. It pretends to explain life, the meaning of life, the purpose of life. It pretends to be able to solve the problems and to give guidance. And by putting human life, humanity, above the web of life. And as we all know, religions are even pretty good in separating us in groups, in that dualistic perception of the world as the goods and the baddies. Okay? The civilized and the barbarians and the savages and things like that. As if those of us that understand the concept of divinity, of a single God, of a God that created all life, of a God that is observing us all, of a God that will that is the one that will that we that we have to expect to provide justice, to be the final judge, and all those things. That means that the what we that means this is the previous less science, not science-based explanation, or not an explanation, a justification for power grab, expansion, because if you look into not all religions, but especially there is the will to expand. There is this imperialistic drive. That's why we cannot understand. That's the same problem, the same patterns. We cannot understand these realities unless we understand that they are unless we understand the accumulation, the wealth accumulation, and the need to expand in order to have more capital, to make capital reproduce more capital. And that's why the technology, that's why capitalocene and technocene is very important. It's two very important concepts. Because the technocene, the capitalocene, invests in the technocene in order to use the tools and the means, the technological tools and means, to have supremacy, to have military supremacy in order to be able to conquer and control others. But never forgetting that there are the mechanisms, the cultural mechanisms, the ideological mechanisms, the propaganda, the psychological warfare, the cultural genocide, along with the life genocide, in order to control people, because we need to control the mind, because this is the problem of mind control that most of us, or at least many of us, do not really grasp properly, because we all tend to believe that our minds are not controlled. Oh, yeah, my mind is not controlled, of course. Yeah, I'm better than that. I'm wiser than that. And if we go back in time and analyze our lives, okay, if we analyze our past, it's so easy to see how many times we have been fooled. And not directly. It's from the cultural environment, from the narratives and the propaganda that we are exposed to in a daily basis. That it's part of our socio-cultural environment. And as I say frequently, these things reinforce each other. The socioeconomic and sociocultural, they reinforce each other. That's why they exist, to reinforce, in order to make us accept the social conditions, the socioeconomic conditions to which we need to adapt, to conform with, to comply, to accept the life conditions that we have to go through, while understanding ourselves as individuals that are competing for scarce resources, when in fact we are competing in an environment that was created, which is a manufactured scarcity, in order to make us weak, in order to deprive us of the means to live, to enslave us. And this requires a mental enslavement. And we do it voluntarily, just by being exposed to the social environment where we live. We don't need anything else. How do we learn language? How do we learn habits? How do we learn the rules? Mimic and repetition. That's why, in order to reverse this, that's another point that I usually try to make it, because it's pretty obvious to me. We, in our brains, in our subconscious minds, there are narratives that are dominant, okay? One single narrative, I think it's usually a combination of narratives that form an environment, a mental, ideological, cultural, psychological environment that allows us to perceive the world and perceive ourselves and coordinate our relations and our behavior and everything else in a certain way, or in specific ways. And is just in order for us to change this order, this order that exists, our minds, subconscious minds, is this kind of order. We need to go through a process of conscious transformation, where we intentionally train ourselves with the new forms of framing reality, of framing knowledge, of framing understanding of what life is, of what humanity is, what is the nature of the human condition, and what's the part of that condition that allows us to become who we are, to become these tools, these instruments in the hands of others to build their pyramids of power and influence and expansion, and the imperialistic expansion and wealth accumulation and all the rest that everybody knows. And why that is not necessary at all in order to have a life. By the way, it's exactly the opposite, that we don't need that to have meaningful lives with purpose. What we need is time. And we need to have motivations to make us wanting to use our life in a creative and constructive ways. Each one of us in a different manner, and different in different moments of our life, because it's how it is. We cannot be the same. We are the same person, but we cannot be the same person when we are 15 and 65. That's it. It would not make sense, I guess. It will not make sense to behave like 15 when you are 65. So, and this should be a culture. We need to build a culture of true liberation. Not this culture of followerism. We talk about democracy and freedom, but we only talk about following authorities and saviors, and put our faith in systems that exploit our good nature, our trust. We don't need a culture of saviors, of leaders, of heroes, of authorities, much less of influencers and celebrities. That's bullshit. That's a way to bullshit ourselves, to diminish ourselves. In any sense, political sense, social sense, cultural sense, and in our very human sense. What we need to understand that as spiritual beings, and by spiritual beings, beings, I mean humans in the web of life, not a humanity floating above this web of life, not an exceptional nature. We are alive, and life has its dignity. And we need that culture. Not a culture of division. We need, I mean, you know that I speak a lot about the ecological, holistic civilization and an economy, which I think it's the natural economy of human beings. I call it reciprocity and sufficiency economy, a socio-ecological, political economy. And the civilization needs to be ecological, but needs to be holistic. Because we need this comprehensive understanding of life. We need this, because, you know, that's why this, if we don't understand this in this holistic way, we don't understand that ourselves, this is a point I make recurrently because it's so important. We need to understand ourselves as bits and pieces of other people's knowledge and experience. This is what we are. There is nothing, I mean, we can be very smart. We can come up with ideas, but those ideas, they have not sprang from, it's from nowhere. As so many people, I mean, this praise of this individual genius, those who are really genius, they understand it. They understand that's their genius doesn't come out of the blue. It is a process. That's why, it's another point. That's why this all works together. It's another point. We cannot understand anything in a proper way without understanding whatever it is as processes and systems. In a relationship. That's what life is about. Just think about your own organism. You are a living being. And what is your living organism? What is your living? What is your what you are composed of several systems and many processes occurring at the same time, occurring simultaneously. Okay? For what? To keep your body in a homeostatic state compatible with life. This is an holistic process. This is not about division and competition for who is the best. Who is the best, the better system, the best system. Who is going to win? Win what? Death. In the end, if competition without cooperation means death, decay, destruction. So, my point is, we need a revolution of the mind. Okay? Because if there is no revolution, if there is no this cultural ideological revolution towards an integration of humanity in the web of life, where it has always belonged, you know, the praise of diversity is in the recognition of unity. Okay? We have to praise diversity. We have to be, I mean, it's not about, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. We do have to praise diversity. But that's only to recognize the unity of life. And that unity of life, that's what I would call spirituality. I cannot find spirituality in the middle, in a city, in spite of all the achievements, the architectural and all the technological and all the things, but the peace of mind. When I kind of feel my feelings and my cognitive affective system aligned and tuned, is when I come to a peaceful place in the middle of rocks and grass growing, and when I see every day a little change in the growth of the new leaves in the trees and the plants and the shrubs and the flowers and everything, and you feel the breeze and you listen to the birds singing. I'm not romanticizing nature. I'm just saying that there is a feeling of being part of feeling peace, of contemplation and admiration, of integral belonging, not separation, not superior or inferior, not this idea of that we are always comparing, this negative way of comparing, this way of trying to see ourselves a little better than others, not trying to see if we never see ourselves in the bottom. It's incredible, this individualistic mindset, it's a negative impact on every level of our humanity. And you think it's normal. You think it's just it cannot avoid it because it's the nature of the human condition. Yeah, that's who we are. That's not a construct. That's not a sociocultural construct and a socioeconomic political construct. Nothing with that. As the psychiatry of our days is pathologizing social grievances and problems and telling people they are sick, they have mental disorders, and they feel bad and they feel depressed because of their miserable lives. That's not. No, it's the human condition. It's you. It's your mind. It's a chemical imbalance in your brain. I mean, it's such a disgraceful culture because it exists to justify a system, an imperialistic civilizational model, which is older than capitalism, okay? I want to emphasize that because some people think the problem is only capitalism. No, the problem is not only capitalism. The problem is when we allow those that lack the human traits, the traits that define our humanity, to become the ones that control society, culture, economy, and politics. And this is exactly what we have. Not only it's this the reality of the global culture and the global civilization above all, or underneath all the differences, the cultural and civilizational differences, ethno-cultural differences that exist in the world. And we need to understand this in a deep, holistic way to create a culture and to create grassroots movements to build an ecological, holistical civilization, and that needs to be, you have to understand that internationalism, it's required. We cannot do these experiments in single countries because there will be if the rest of the system, if the rest of the world systems and the international order doesn't change, that's very difficult that a single country or even a group of countries can do it alone. So it requires, and this is where the difficulty comes, a change in consciousness about the understanding of the nature of the human condition, about the systems that have been built, that have been for so many centuries and millennia shaping our way of understanding ourselves and understanding economic system and empires, with a good faith. Always, you always see people praising empires as a civilizational force. Yeah. I mean, and all this needs to be challenged. This order, which is a mental order as well, needs to be challenged. Or how can we build a international system, a cooperative international system based on cooperation, not in domination, not in expansion, but in sharing. We came to the moment where imperialism doesn't have much where. Now we need to fight each other to conquer new land. There is no empty land, no terra nullius. It has never existed. But now you cannot appeal to these concepts, to these ideas. Today you need really to eliminate civilization, because everywhere is civilization. Basically, there is a few. There is still some indigenous peoples living in Amazonia and elsewhere, but basically most of the planet is civilized. So Um, I mean, you know, that's, I think we need to invest. I hate this word, as you can imagine, but in humanity in the web of nature, in understanding this intellectual investment, this cognitive, psychocognitive understanding of humanity in the web of nature as a spiritual liberation, spiritual cultural liberation movement, liberation consciousness, a conscious, a conscious process, transformative process towards a culture of true liberation, which means that is the responsibility of us for the well-being of each other, not the pursuit of self-interest, not the pursuit of wealth accumulation, not the pursuit of everything leaving others behind, looking aside when we walk, seeing others in this, seeing people in the sidewalk. I mean, totally dehumanized. Is only their fault? Do you think that it's only their fault? Do you think that everybody in this world that suffers, that is deprived of the means to live, live above their, is because they have been living above the means, their means? That's what you believe? That you believe they deserve to be punished, while those the Wall Street banksters and acolytes need to be rewarded? I mean, I don't even the word, to be absurdly and obscenely rewarded? That's what you believe? How delusional are you? Okay, I'm going to end it here. I just would like to help people to reflect. I'm just a nobody, okay, if you want to. But even nobodies can think, If you are a nobody, you can think by yourself, and you can do your own research. And you can find nice, honest intellectuals and academics. There are not many, but you can find them. The ones that they haven't sold their soul. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for listening. I will be back soon.